everyone is a teacher, everyone is a student, and we will always have stuff to work through, as you said, and that is so important to understand. There will never be a time when we don't have something, or a bunch of things if you are me. So, there's just a lot that's going on, and being aware that you're never going to get to Zen levitating, as you said, even if you are a monk on the mountains, even though that's the image, that is not the reality of things, even for the most quote unquote advanced people. Understanding that, I think, is important.
Aleana Kali is the founder of Brands Are Alive. She helps people reconnect with their essence and their creativity to develop their brand and marketing strategy. Aleana shares important lessons on growing a business, the benefits of journaling, and some essential tips to help you with consistency and creativity. We also discuss identifying non-healthy partnerships and respecting one's own boundaries. And finally, we talk about the benefits of getting in front of the camera to address your audience. This episode is loaded with goodness. Enjoy it, and welcome to Leadership-adelics. Welcome again to Leadership-adelics.
Thank you. It's really good to be back here. And it's funny because I was here last year.
Yeah, so I had to actually look back, and it was February 7th we recorded. And so we're a year and a week after that. We're February 14th. I'm assuming a few things happened since the last time we talked, but before we go there, for people who haven't listened to the previous episode, can you tell us who Aleana is?
I have no idea who I am, actually. I know who I am, but I don't know who the I is. Not that I am what I do, but what I do, at least, like, that's generally what people introduce themselves as. Like, this is what I do. What I do is I help conscious and creative people become more fully self-expressed in their brand. So my background is in branding and marketing. And for many years, I was a marketing consultant. I was doing well on paper, but I wasn't very happy by the end of it. I felt that something was deeply missing from the work that I was doing and from my life. Although I had reached all the goals that I thought would make me feel more complete, I didn't feel the way I thought I would. And, it sent me down a path of trying to figure out who I am, as you said. And I found that my biggest joy is in being self-expressed and in helping other people express themselves fully. So now I use branding and marketing as strange as it's going to sound, as a path to self-knowing and part of the spiritual journey, and as a path of self-expression. That's what I do in a nutshell.
That summarized a big part of our episode from last time, so people don't necessarily need to go back. Thank you. One of the things, I was listening to our episode our previous episode just before we met, and we talked a lot about your healing journey, which you mentioned now, and I was thinking about, why was it so important for you to go on that journey? You'd achieved a lot. You'd done a lot of work. I think you'd done 3 businesses then. And I'm curious, from the importance perspective, of course, it's important for the self, but from a business perspective, how did that change how you approach work and business and the impact you had on other people?
Yeah, I think what happened for me was that I was constantly looking for the next thing that was going to feel right. I didn't know what feeling right felt like. So it was kind of like, when I get that, I will feel right. And that didn't work. And I think that's very common for people to be overachievers, to try to mask some sort of pain instead of facing the emotions that they really want to have. So that was the pattern that I was repeating in my life. And why it was important from a business perspective, well, first of all, it stopped me from constantly chasing after the next grass is greener, shiny syndrome kind of issue that I was suffering from my whole life, where I would put all my effort into something. And then when it stopped being fun, past that initial, excitement of entrepreneurship, once I got it to a point where I was making money and everything, and then I had to build an actual business with all of the operational stuff, I was like, nah, I'm not interested in that. I'm only interested in doing the fun parts of the business, which is, making the money and marketing and all the things that I enjoyed, right? Like growing and all of that. What I didn't enjoy, I wasn't willing to do because it was not something that I loved. I did it as a means to an end. And I would get to that end and then I would realize I fell out of love with this again. And it's because I didn't really love it. It was because I was hoping or looking for something, for the next big thing, hoping that it was going to make me feel complete, but that didn't work.
So how did that shift afterward? Like how do you now approach your business?
So this has actually been the most fun and the most challenging ride ever with Brands Are Alive. I never would have stuck with it this far if I didn't love it. It really was and still is very challenging, and I absolutely love it. My husband and I joke all the time that it's kind of like a child. Like I really treat it that way. And I know a lot of people say their business is their baby, but for me, it really is literally like I talk to it. And I know this makes me sound like a crazy person. I don't care. I talk to her. She has her spirit. I talk to her and I ask her, what does she want? How does she want to grow up? What is alive for her? What does she want to create next? Does this partnership feel right to her? Does this marketing campaign feel right to her? Does this pricing feel? I talk to her like she is a real person, because to me she is. And I am very aware of the co-creative process. It's like an expression of who I am, but also an expression of an idea whose time has come really. And it was going to come to life in a physical form, whether through me or through someone else. I chose to be the one to do the crap that would enable it to, continue growing, because it really is a lot of work. But it's definitely not like the approaches that I had with businesses before, where it was like, what's the fastest, easiest way that I can make the most money with the least amount of effort possible? That used to be my mindset, right? That was like, what's the opportunity? Where is the opportunity to make the most money? So in the past, I was not so much concerned about the creative process or what I wanted to create or the meaning or anything. I just was like, what's legal and not super unethical that will make me money, that I can sleep at night, within, of course, justifying certain things to myself. Like, yeah, it's okay to use weird marketing tactics. Everybody's doing that. There's nothing wrong with that. Of course, like justifying those things to myself. And that's how I used to approach business. And it's a completely different thing. And I was making more money in my last business with a lot less time. And it's still so worth it. Like it's still so worth it to do this, because it really feels alive for me. It's everything.
Yeah. So how much of that change happened in the last year? Since the last time we talked, like how have you nourished your baby in the last year? What are some of the big kind of breakthroughs and heading toward the journey of the last year?
I nourished myself because I realized that it's an expression of who I am, and I needed to do the work internally. So I would say 80 or 90% of the work was internal. It was around getting over my own fears of being fully self-expressed, trusting my intuition more and more, checking myself all the time if I am being in integrity with myself, double checking my boundaries with myself and with other people. There's a lot of work I had to do internally for this, to protect it, really, to make sure that it grows the way I want it to be. Because there were some people that, I do believe that most of the time people have good intentions, people who would come in and want to maybe kind of like do partnerships and things like that. But then I realized that this isn't like, it's not right for the business, or those things that came up that I had to work on myself first in order to nourish the baby, if that makes sense. But of course, there were some tactical and strategic things that had to be done, but a lot of it was inner work and really making sure to walk my talk, especially during like hard times, right? When things aren't going the way that I hope that they would go, or not as fast as I wanted them to work out.
Yeah. What are some of those tools that you use for your inner work to figure this out with a partnership, for example?
Sure. It's a lot of it is self-reflection. First and foremost, is just being aware of what's going on. So, for example, I'll tell you that one thing for sure, for me at least, this is what's true for me. I always get the sense or the feeling that something is not right, but the mistake is usually that I get the feeling and then I override it. Yeah. Now, I don't override my intuition as much as I used to, but it doesn't mean that I'm not susceptible to it or I don't make that mistake. It definitely happened to me a couple of times where, for example, there was a potential partnership where this person I asked to set some boundaries around the partnership. And this person was like, can we do this one thing once and then later discuss that? And I was like, okay, for the sake of moving fast and making things easy, fine. But I know there was a voice in my head that said, no, hold on. Like, this is an important thing. We got to work it out. I know, Aleana, that you want to move fast. I know you want to make this happen. And he wants to make this happen. Let's do this. Why complicate things? We are both, we both have this entrepreneurial spirit, and we're not like corporate, big corporations where you have to move through 500 people for a decision. Let's just do it. But I realized very quickly after that this was a pattern, and there was this kind of desire to move really fast and to not listen when I say, hey, I have a need in this area. And that had made me stop and go, okay, in what way am I not respecting my own boundaries internally that would have created this in my life? And I had to say no to that. And then I had to kind of look back at my own behaviors with myself and realize that maybe there were times where I didn't respect my own boundaries in terms of when I say, I'm going to do the work between this hour and this hour on this particular project, but instead another thing more fun in my business would pop up and I would go, I want to work on that. When the reality is I should be working on that, the less fun thing. So that is a crossing of my own boundary. And I have to stop doing that if I am to expect other people to not cross my boundaries. Not that this person meant to or anything. We had to have a conversation and part ways. And we realized that we both had work to do on ourselves before we got back to potentially working together in the future. I have only, good feelings towards these people. Wish them all the best. I'm just saying that's like, doesn't happen very often. It happens maybe a few times a year, but it does happen in that way. And the tools that I use for self-awareness, simple meditation, simple journaling, I have so many of these. Like I probably went through, I don't even know. Like I use those, and then I sometimes just use my phone and record myself talking. And I look like a crazy person, like at the gym, working out and talking to my phone, recording myself and just letting my subconscious mind speak to it. And then later go back and re-listen when I am not in that emotional state anymore, go back and listen to it and see what comes up for me. Over time, I developed the ability to, most of the time, not always, to notice the emotion. And it's really about noticing the feeling of being out of integrity and not lying to myself and not saying, no, it's okay. It's like, no, your gut is telling you something. Pause and look into it.
Yeah, I love that. The integrity and the boundaries start within yourself, which is a big message. And the journaling also is a super powerful tool. And I'm curious how your journaling process works and what's the benefit from it that you derive, because a lot of people I don't think get journaling and the power of it, and I don't use it all the time, but if I go do a ceremony in Peru, I'll probably be journaling every day because it's such a powerful tool. So I'm curious how that manifests for you.
Absolutely, you're so right. And a lot of people I talk to and I work with will have resistance to journaling, and they would say things like, I don't like to write, or I don't like to journal. And it's like, well, the cool thing about writing is it helps you organize your thoughts. Like, clean writing is clean thinking. But I use writing first thing in the morning. Not always. Okay, when I see these things, I don't want to make it sound like I have such a perfect routine. I wake up and every day is always the same. It's like I aim to do those things consistently. Yeah. And then there are days when I just realize I'm in the middle of something. Like, what the heck are you doing? Yeah. Do you ever get those moments where you're like, You're like, you find yourself watching a video and you're like, wait, you're not supposed to be doing that right now.
We could go on a tangent there about the tangent. But, you also touch on consistency, and he had a great message on there. What I love is, I can hear in all of your words, they remind me of very strong messages you have in your videos, because you're doing what you're preaching. You're actually preaching what you're doing. And so the consistency is really important. But, we could get off on a tangent. I think that we were on the journaling aspect.
On the journaling aspect, absolutely.
Before that, though, I did want to say that you mentioned the routine and the consistency. I think you also don't want to be trapped in the consistency of the routine. So it's kind of a two side edges. I think a lot of people, it's like they'll go on the treadmill every day and they'll get a repetitive stress injury on their feet, when they should probably alternate from one day to another. So that's always been a favorite topic here. Challenge the consistency, but be consistent.
There's a point about consistency. So before I talk about journaling real quick, the way I see consistency is, the idea is to make sure that we keep showing up and doing the things that we believe are going to get us the results we want, right? And to be intentional about it. So carving out the time for the things that matter, because what I've learned in 2022 is that creation starts with time, space, and you have to set the intention and almost force it and say, I am going to carve out the time and space for the creation of the things that matter to me. And that's not just projects and work projects and business, but also the relationships that you care about. Fix a time to have lunch with the person that matters to you and the people that matter to you, the calls and that sort of thing. I have these things plugged into my calendar for a reason. That's what I mean by consistency. It's more of a setting an intention, but it's not supposed to be prison. There's a difference, right? So with journaling, I go through periods sometimes when I don't feel the need to journal, and then I don't just make myself journal just because. But then those periods that I don't journal because I don't need to journal, what ends up happening is life kind of gets a little bit chaotic, and then I really need to journal. So anyway, just notice that there for a second. My process is I wake up first thing in the morning, or one of the earliest things I do is I journal. I set maybe 15 minutes. I end up taking a little bit longer, just 3 pages of writing, whatever comes to mind. And that's mostly to get things that are just sitting there on paper. And I really if I have nothing to say, I'll just write, I have nothing to say. And it's crazy to see the randomness of the ideas that, I want coffee. Oh, I feel this way. Whatever, they're just random things and things that I'm thinking about, and just get them on paper. And it just makes the rest of my morning a lot better, whether it's a meditation or getting into work or whatever I plan to do after. It makes it a lot better, and it helps me kind of like reflect a little bit. But then other than that, I just have it on me most of the time when especially when I feel like I need to get something off me, like something that's heavy.
Yeah.
Some people might call it like a brain dump. Sometimes it's like, I don't even have anything specific to get rid of. I just need to write something down, just put it on paper. I don't know. Yeah. For me, it's a sort of like emotional or energetic release. I don't know why, but it just works for me. But yeah, like the process for most people who are listening, I would say, make it a habit to try it, even for just 1 week, that every morning you spend 15 minutes writing whatever comes to mind. Even if you have nothing to say, just put, I have nothing to say. And you'll notice a considerable difference, not only because journaling works, but often what people do is first thing they wake up and they grab their phone and they're looking at their phone, or they're being pulled in different. It's so easy, right, for these things to happen. And just setting that as an intention first thing in the morning really helps, I find.
Yeah, the grabbing the phone first thing in the morning, I think it's a habit that I would challenge everybody to try to break and see, what is the other thing you could be doing that's healthier than that? And it might be reading off a magazine or writing, like you mentioned. It might be, I don't know, taking a walk outside and
yes,
breathing fresh air. Like there's so many other things, and the phone will still be there. when you get back. So that's kind of a favorite topic of mine.
Yeah.
my wife and I discuss quite a bit because we have different approaches on that one. But it's kind of an interesting one, and it's so easy, right? You wake up, you've got this shiny things that, it's got your favorite wallpaper on it. It's going to give you some good endorphin rush when you shake your feet, hopefully.
That's a really good point. The dopamine hit that you get from those things really desensitizes you to the things that are genuinely enjoyable, that are going to further your goals in life and the things that you do want. Because it's kind of like if you're constantly eating sugar with a spoon and then I give you a piece of fruit, it'd be like, what is this? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I have kids. I know what you mean. And I've been there too. The fascinating thing I find about journaling sometimes is when you start the act of journaling, you have no idea what will really end up on the page once you're done. I mean, unless like you're doing a brain dump of something, like I've experienced that where there's something stressing you, you're trying to go to bed and, like you want to put it down on paper so you don't have to carry it with you anymore. So like, it's like put that idea down. But I've also seen the creative process of like, it's almost like pulling a string slowly from your mind. And especially after a plant medicine ceremony, this is like really useful because you can't remember everything, but as you're writing it down, you're getting all those details. It's like, oh, wow, I don't remember that.
I'm laughing because I just remembered one ceremony where I wrote, let's see where this goes. And then I went through the trip. And then the next thing I wrote was, wow. And that's it. The whole thing. The whole page just said, wow.
Wow.
that was a wow experience.
Ineffable.
It's one of those. There's so much to talk about there, like the creative part that you mentioned and I'm really fascinated with this, and I'm very passionate about the creative process. And it's something that matters so much, right? In self-expression, that I try to talk to people about all the time, which is being fully self-expressed. A huge part of it is freeing this creative genius that is in every single person, really, because we are creators. Right? That's what we are. We are creators, and we create an expression of who we are, a reflection of who we are. And when you allow an idea to take shape without attachment to what it should be or when it should be completed, you just kind of follow the trail of your own curiosity. The things that you end up getting out of that idea is just mesmerizing stuff. Like, I can't tell you how many times I would get an idea and then I would write about it. And then I would just put it down and come back to it months later. And then 2 years later, it would transform into something. Brands Are Alive started with one of those ideas. Yeah. It was just a combination of ideas that I had and that I was writing about and never thought I would do anything with. It was just observations about life and the importance of passion and purpose and creativity and unleashing the creative potential and all of these things. And then, follow that for a couple of years. And then here we are. But, I actually made a video about it called The Biggest Mistake That Blocks Your Creative Genius or something. And that I realized because when we have this, if this is taking a little bit of a content creation, great. This is very applicable to business people, to leaders, especially the ones who are creating content, right, to share their ideas. One of the mistakes I used to make when I started is I would have this content calendar, these ideas to write about, and I didn't carve out the time to explore my creative side. So I would be busy with other business stuff, and then I would realize a few days before, it's like, oh, I have a due date for my next piece of content. And then I would scramble to put together something. And I would put a lot of effort into it because I love it and I genuinely care about creating something good. And it would turn out decent. But I would feel like this idea wanted to be a lot more than this. And I am only covering the surface. Like, there's so much more to this that I want to talk about. But for the sake of time, I can't do that right now. So whatever. And I would put out the piece of content and I always felt like something was missing. And then I started to realize, Oh, okay. It's important. I realize it's important to have a deadline and a schedule and to create consistency in your content and your creativity or creative endeavors in general. To hold yourself accountable to some deadlines is important. Otherwise, nothing will happen. Let's be real. But also, it's important to keep the space open for the creative exploration to go on beyond that. So don't stop just after don't force the idea to complete itself by this deadline, by this date, because sometimes there's so much more to uncover. And the cue is always the curiosity. The cue is always this dopamine little thing, like, yes, this idea I want to talk about, or this idea I want to write about. And the more you grab your phone in the morning and you read stuff, the more you don't connect to these things.
Yeah.
So,
I'm always happy to talk about creativity.
That's
that's a huge thing for me, is like creativity and authenticity. In fact, the retreat we ran in October was called the Sacred Creativity Retreat. It was all about helping people reconnect with creativity.
I saw.
It was amazing. A book I read to prepare for this, I'm still reading it, so I can't pretend I finished it. It's called The Mission of Art by Alex Gray.
Let me write that down. Well,
and it's, I keep recommending it, but it's a fantastic book. And there's a line in there that I think you're going to enjoy, because you're also really in tune with your breathing. You mentioned that in the last podcast. It says the word inspire refers to the breath, which has always been associated with life and spirit. To breathe means that our bodies are alive. To inspire is to be in spirit. Inspiration means access to spirit. Spirit brings vision to the artist via the imagination, the multidimensional media center of our minds. And then it goes on. But I loved how you connect that inspiration, art, and breath, things, and almost said brands are alive in there. But he said bodies are alive.
I love that.
But I
love that. Hey, it's not my idea. It's really not my idea. I'm very open about this. It is, but it isn't. The way I see it and the way I sense into this is this thing was going to be created either way. It didn't come from my mind. Maybe my mind had, I'm sure, of course, my mind had something to do with the strategies and the planning and the, making decisions and that sort of thing. But this thing is alive, and it came alive through me. That's how it is. I feel like it's an idea that we kind of chose each other. And there was some sort of deal where it's like, the idea is telling me, as long as you are following your heart's truest desires and your integrity with yourself and with the vision, it's going to work out. And just, a lot, like, it's very co-creative. It's very co-creative. So
it's definitely working out. I really enjoy your videos, and there's one you shared with me when you were in front of a whiteboard and you had all your thoughts laid out there, and you were talking through it, and it was just fantastic the way you showed up and your energy. Really appreciated that. But you weren't always into doing videos, right?
No.
So what was that journey to go from, I don't want to put myself out there and I don't want to do videos, to now I'm putting myself out there?
Yeah, it's so funny. So the video that I shared with you was called something about brand emotional signature. The funny thing is, like, quite literally this past weekend, I just made a video, which is not going to come out this week. I think it's next week or the week after is coming out, which is about my journey starting videos. So that's funny that you mentioned that.
Hey, good. It
occurred to me. Yes, exactly. I was like, I should talk about that, because now I take this for granted, but I can remember a time when I really struggled with this. I was a hermit. I really hated human contact. I operated a business behind the scenes. I thought I was very unlikable, unlovable, broken. I don't fit in anywhere. I'm a misfit amongst misfits. Even if I go to like a group of misfits, which is kind of true. If I go to a group of weirdos, I'm the weird one. Not like that, but like I was more like, I wasn't like super socially awkward or anything. I had like decently normal relationships, I guess. I was able to operate life. but I was in a lot of pain and I didn't know how to handle my pain. I didn't know how to handle human relationships. So I didn't want to put myself out there. I also just, I don't know, I had a lot of healing to do. And I just remember, I remember when I was still forming the idea for Brands Are Live, and I thought what I needed was a coach. So I hired a coach. She's great, but you know what I really needed was more spiritual healing, which I had to do on my own. Nobody could do that for me. But she was, I was like, hey, you know, I want to turn my ideas into a course because I don't want to do more consulting and any of that. I want to do coaching. I don't want to do anything to do with people. I was trying to remove human relationships or context from business. And she was like, you know, maybe it's just that you haven't found the right people to work with. So how about you try putting out like content, videos, whatever. She asked me to put videos, and I struggled a lot with it at first. I was like I'm not going to edit. It's funny. We were talking before this about how much you love editing and I hate editing. So I was like, I don't want to have to do anything to do with editing. But then that put all this pressure to make a perfect video right away. And it was just messy. It was really hard. I struggled to be consistent. I hated, the process. I hated looking at myself. I hated hearing my own voice. I couldn't understand how to organize my own thoughts in a way that meets. It was easy for me to have a conversation with someone about these ideas. Like if I was sitting with a friend and having a conversation, it would have been okay. But me talking to a camera, it was like a deer in headlight. Like, oh, I don't know what to do with this thing. It feels I thought human relationships were weird. This is weirder, so I struggled with it a lot. And it took me a year from the time that I started making videos to the time that I became consistent with them. It took me a year. And then it's been about 8 months as we're making this in Feb 2023, 9 months since I started putting videos consistently every week. And the growth I've experienced since has been just insane. Just as a result of just being in front of a camera, forcing myself to be like, I don't like this. It's not perfect, perfectionism was a huge problem for me before. I was like, I don't like it. It's very far from what I like. But I'm just going to be okay with it and put it out. And I still had very high expectations of myself, but the consistency really pushed me to, I could talk forever about the benefits of making videos, like being able to improving your communication skills, improving your comfort with yourself, improved self-awareness, obviously more clients, people that are coming to you who know who you are. There's a trust level because on video, it's very different from like just writing posts. Yeah. There's just so many benefits to it, but it took me a whole year of like randomly posting a video and then waiting for 3 weeks or 3 months at a time and then making another video and then disappearing a year before I finally became consistent with it. And when I became consistent with it, life turned really crazy and it became harder to stay consistent. And I'm happy to report that I somehow was still able to stick with that. So
yeah, no, it's wonderful. I was really impressed. I hadn't seen your videos since we talked back in February. And then you reached out to me, you were doing a survey, and then you said, oh, check out this video. I checked it out. And I was like, wow, that's really good. And I wonder what else she has on her channel. And then I look at all those videos and I was like, whoa, like lots of views, doing a lot better than I'm doing. But it's fantastic. I was really happy to see that. And the way, you showed up, your messages were really applicable and useful, really important. I think, especially for people right now. Like I've got tons of friends getting laid off right now. I'm like seeing this on LinkedIn left and right. Mm-hmm. And it's really hard when that happens. And a lot of people have to look inside when that happens. And so, some of the messages you have in there are really applicable to helping people figure out, like, who am I? How am I presenting myself? Like, how do I move forward with this? And I'm just like, how do you just keep coming up with those? Like it's journaling because it's wonderful. I love to see the process.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And thank you for your kind words. And I want to call you out for saying that I was doing better than you, because that's not true. That is not true. There's none of that. We are each following our own paths. And You are doing absolutely amazing. I mean, look at you in this podcast. This is just a beautiful creation. And the retreat that you created and everything, and your presence and the Flute Fridays.
Oh, thank you.
I hope you know how loved and appreciated you are. I really do.
Thank you.
You know, the way I come up with the content ideas, it's literally just my own process and my own journey. And sometimes it's something that I went through last year and it just popped up. I realized, oh, I made a lot of progress. Let me talk about that. And sometimes it's something that I was going through recently. And I try not to give I never give how-to advice for something that I'm still going through, that I have emotions about. If I still feel like I have unresolved emotions, I try to leave that, process it, and see what needs to, before I tell somebody else this is the way out, before I've made my way out of the maze. But a lot of it is actually, all of it, now that I think about it, is my own experience, my own journey, people I've worked with, but mostly myself, right? Because I think that's the best thing you can talk about is your own experience, because that's what you understand most,
I love something you said, the unique divine in you, but it's like that uniqueness, that divine in you. And there's a seed that we are born with, the potential of everything that we could potentially become in this lifetime that wants to express itself. And then there's a unique path that each one of us goes through. And it's not replaceable. Like, you're the only one who can talk about who you are, and you're the only one who can talk about your life's message and your own path. So I think the most value we can provide each other is in sharing our own personal experiences, rather than trying to guess what's going on in somebody else's head. I will never know. I could potentially use a couple of other people's experiences to help support some idea or whatever. But most of it is when I'm talking about the emotion and the pain, and alchemizing the pain, and going over, or making peace with, rather than going over an emotion, but making peace with a situation, or healing something, or seeing things from a different perspective. I try to just keep it to my own experiences. So I think journaling definitely helps in the fact that it helps me process. I don't do it for that. I do it mostly for my own well-being and for my own growth. And sometimes I discover great things out of it. Actually, now that you mentioned it, I have a few questions that I like to ask myself, specifically for content. So let me just pull my project management tool, because that's where I know I have the questions, and I will just read them real quick. They're great questions for someone who is wanting to find more expanding on ideas, and courtesy of my husband, who helps me craft those questions. Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, he's amazing. He's it's funny, because I feel like if there is such a thing as having guides, or people that come to help you out in a lifetime, my husband is definitely one of those people that has just helped me so much heal, and was a huge part of my growth experience. So
it's beautiful. Maybe I need to get him on the podcast.
You absolutely should. I think you'll love talking to him. I'm sure you will, actually. I'm sure you'll enjoy it. Also, he's really big on psychedelics too.
Great.
So the questions are: what am I going through right now? What is the lesson? What are my biggest challenges? How am I approaching my biggest challenges? And what am I curious about? Those are questions I periodically ask myself. I just set the time to journal and ask those questions, and just kind of reflect on what is going on right now in my life at a bigger level. What is the lesson that I think I am having to learn right now? Right now, the lesson that I'm going through as we speak is being okay when you're in the middle of unbelievable chaos and unbelievable, just that's the lesson that I am learning. That is not chaos that you created, and that is completely outside your control. That it just comes out of nowhere, and it's whoa, yeah.
I had a post on that a few days ago.
Yeah,
because we had a fire. We had a fire during the retreat. So So when we organized the retreat, I crafted everything to the T, and this was just risk mitigation left and right. And then we get to the retreat center, and a day before our first ayahuasca ceremony, the mountain that's right behind the retreat center catches fire. I mean,
Oh
that's a huge
no.
mountain full of sequoia trees. And it's the evening, and we head to bed,
Oh.
and we look at the mountain that is burning in the night. There's only trees between the mountain and the retreat center, and probably like 5 to 10 firefighters with shovels and maybe a few buckets and a few villagers or people from the community helping. And I'd never been so close to such a big fire. Even though we have tons of fire here in the Northwest, we get to enjoy the smoke a lot. Not enjoy, being sarcasm here. But there, it was like right there, and the smoke. So we all go to bed. I was worried we'd get a knock at the door at 3 a.m, like we have to evacuate. And you know what? Like, we woke up the next morning and the fire was gone. It was like a miracle. It was still going on the other side of the mountain. So 2 guests went to actually help fight the fire when they were supposed to meet with the Shipibo healer for their consultation. Yeah. They showed up for the consultation, like covered in ashes.
Covered in smoke.
But, you know, though. It's like the big lesson there when you talk about chaos and things you don't expect, when, you know, you like to have things figured out and organized, especially for a retreat or anything in life. When that hits you, there's an art, I realized, that was kind of the lesson of like surrendering to it, but being ready at the same time. There's a little bit of faith and trust in others, and there's a lot of emotions that, you know, I'm just curious how that's working out for you, like what you're going through as you're trying to find a lesson or to adapt to the situation.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, for me, it's not Brenzer life. It's actually just other things in like personal life and things that are happening that are just a little heavy. And how I'm dealing with it, I don't know. It's funny. I was just telling my husband earlier, I was like, I don't know if I'm dealing with it well. And he's like, you're doing great. But I was like, I expect myself to be at this point in my life a lot more unfazed, because I developed this ability to be okay with no matter what happens out there, to be okay. So how am I affected by this? It's very important that you take time for yourself. Again, protecting the time and space to take care of yourself. And it's even more important when you feel like you don't have the time and space to do those things, because that's necessary for you to just stay sane, right? So taking care of first of all, your most basic physical needs and survival needs, which I know for myself and for a lot of people, it's easy to forget those things, like skip a meal or not sleep well, or, you know, that sort of thing. You know, I want to say all the things that people probably already know about meditating and taking the space and the time and whatever. But I think that the biggest thing is, you touched on it. It's the surrender, just accepting that we really don't have control.
Yeah.
We just don't. We try to pretend. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm pretending to have control here. I am. But I don't, you know, and it's crazy because on the one hand, I feel like I have complete control over my life. I'm literally creating it, you know, in my mind's eye. But at the same time, I feel like, nope, you know, I really have no control. One thing that really helps me is making peace with not feeling okay.
Yeah.
And just understanding that not feeling okay does not mean you're not okay. It can feel that way. But it's fine. Like, it hit me in a weird way. I remember, not recently, but like I keep remembering this, like, oh, it's okay to not feel okay. It's okay to feel like crap. It's okay to, you know, it's not okay to put up with it. I'm not saying like, oh, it's fine, like just brush it under the rug or anything. Yeah. I'm just saying that, like, observing it and understanding that, for me at least, the suffering is not happening out there. It's all in my mind's interpretation of what's happening that's creating the suffering. And boy, is it real. It just feels so real when you're in it, when you're in the thick of that thing that, you know, when you take yourself out of it, or I'm sure in the future, I could look back and go, yeah, I definitely could have been okay. Like, the things that I just remember times when I worried about things in the past where I felt like life was ending and things were really, really bad. And then looking back at it, it was like, yeah, that wasn't too bad, but it felt bad for the person I was, but then it was a catalyst for growth. And I've grown so much that now I can look back at it and say that that's not a big deal. Yeah. I went through it and I know how to deal with it. And I know what the lesson is.
Yeah. That's a really strong message. It's okay not to be okay. And, I would add on top of that, it will pass.
Thank you. That is the mantra for me. This is not going to last forever. This is not going to last forever. This is not going to last forever. I just keep reminding myself, no matter how long, let's suppose it lasts my whole life. My life is not going to last forever. Great. That's great news. Yeah. It's not going to be even. It's going to resolve itself sooner than later.
Yeah. I find in Buddhism, there's a lot around, impermanence and being okay, not being okay. And also acknowledging that life isn't forever and our bodies are going to break down and it's part of it. And the sooner we start accepting that, the sooner we feel better and we can move on to like enjoying life. It's funny. I was just reading an article, another thing, that people need to be okay with is not worrying about what other people thinks too. They interviewed, there was a study they talk about where they interviewed people who were like 80 years and older. And they asked them, what do you regret the most, or what do you wish you'd done earlier? And most of them were saying, I wish I didn't care about what other people thought earlier in my life. Because you're so worried about that. And, when we were talking about videos too, I think there's a lot of that goes into making videos. Anyway.
No one is going to judge you as hard as you judge yourself is what I realized when I started making the videos. I was like, it's like your own judgments towards yourself, but you're projecting it on other people. So if you could survive your own judgments 24/7, then you could probably survive somebody else judging you for a few seconds. And I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I don't care at all what people think about me. Like, there's always going to be that little part of me that's like, oh, tell me that people like me and love me. That's great. Like, it's a good feeling. And if somebody says, well, I don't like you, there's like, but it's really like a pebble on a massively infinite mansion made of the most, like the strongest and most powerful kind of like building, and you just put a pebble and it's like, dook. That's how it feels. It's like, it's just a little, it's not that I don't feel it at all. It's just in the grand scheme of things, here's the way I see it. I have a message and I'm going to say it, and I don't care what anybody thinks.
That's right.
My message is more important than anything. I'm not here to please. I'm not here to convince anyone. I'm here to share my message. And that's the thing for everybody else.
And you're embodying it. I mean, that's what's wonderful. It's a big part of your message, the fact that people should embody their message.
Exactly.
And you're doing great. I'm looking at my notes here. Good. Do you have any questions for me? Because you wanted to catch up both ways, and I want to give you the opportunity to do that as well.
It's a tough one. It's a tough question. I meant to ask it to you earlier, but I didn't want to go off a tangent. We were talking about suffering, and you were talking about Buddhism and stuff. I don't know much about. I always surprise myself how much in common I have in my own thinking with like Buddhist thinking, but then I don't necessarily. Don't know. I mean, I wouldn't call myself a Buddhist because I'm not practicing per se or anything. But one thing you've talked about is like the impermanence of things. And I was wondering if you would know, how do you love without attachment?
That was a hard one. It's interesting. Like, I had to learn that the hard way with my kids. And it was actually a mushroom ceremony that I did last year in Peru in June to prepare for our October ceremony. So we did a team building event together. And the team building event was the Sacred Creativity Retreat team. And we were trying the local mushrooms just to see how potent they were. And it was excruciatingly strong.
Do you know what strain it was?
It was the Mazatec mushrooms, but it was a lot stronger than they normally are. And the way we prepared them and ate them just made that even more stronger. And
you
so
do like to complicate your life. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, and so I was guiding the ceremony too. So for 5 minutes in, we feel the tingles, and we're like, oh my God, this is going to be a strong journey. Mm-hmm. And I was on the floor. And I was I had to surrender everything. I was forced to surrender everything, all the attachments, in order to get through that to the other side. It was almost like, I was brought up Catholic, so they talk about Jesus saying, hey, if you want, I think it's Jesus, if you want to get into the kingdom of God, like get rid of all your belongings. And that's how you hear it as a kid, and that's how it sticks in my head. But this was really experiencing that, but not just the material things. It was also the attachments to people, and to your kids and to your family. Realizing that love and attachment is a different thing. So you can love somebody without necessarily being attached to them. You can love and accept that your relationship with them is impermanent. That, like I've got my oldest son is turning 18, is going to start going to college next year. So there's a lot of that going on. It's learning to let go and still appreciate that love, but without clinging to them. And I think it's a muscle. Definitely, it's a feeling as well. And I actually felt very free during that mushroom ceremony when I was able to release those attachments, but still love everyone. It brought a lot of peace when I got to the other side of the struggle. And eventually I was able to get up and start playing music. But I had to release everything. And everything you said earlier, I'm kind of going back, that just triggered something. But you said you don't talk about things you haven't figured out yourself. And I think that's really important. Because especially if you're, a spiritual guide or healer or somebody people look up to, like, you need to work on your own shit. And if you haven't worked on them, giving advice to others, that's not good. Like you see that in the world of facilitators, where they'll run ceremonies and they haven't worked out on their own shit. And the truth is, you're always going to be working out on shit. Like, like there's not a stage where you're going to be like, oh, I'm Zen and I can levitate. I mean, I think it's like you might think that.
You crushed my dreams, man.
It's like you might think that earlier in your life, but I think the older you get, the older you realize it's like, oh man, all that stuff just keeps growing. It's part of being human. But anyway.
That is so true. That is incredibly true. And that's a very important message. I know we joked about it, but that's a very important. I don't believe there is, when it comes to spiritual teachers or whatever, the reason why I don't, I try not to use labels about myself is because I don't want to confuse people. Because if we say a brand marketing strategist, they think one thing. If they spiritual teacher, they think another thing. And I don't know if I would be honestly a spiritual teacher or anything. I'm just somebody who's really interested in achieving the highest evolution that I can in this lifetime and living the best life that I can. And, in the process, helping other people. Everyone is a teacher. Everyone is a student, and we will always have stuff to work through, as you said. And that is so important to understand. There will never be a time when we don't have something, or a bunch of things if you are me. So, there's just a lot that's going on, and being aware that you're never going to get to Zen levitating, as you said, even if you are a monk on the mountains, even though that's the image, that is not the reality of things, even for the most quote unquote advanced people. Understanding that, I think, is important, like taking away that halo of perfection and just because a lot of it is fear. The reason why people, as you said, like in the psychedelic facilitators or spiritual teachers or people who we would expect to have worked through their crap wouldn't have worked through their crap. The biggest reason is fear of being seen as imperfect. Is like, how can I be this while I'm human? And the rejection of the human side is the problem. And I talk about this sometimes. I made a video a long time ago. I wouldn't be surprised if you've never seen it, but I was talking about the importance of walking the duality of being both God and a human at the same time. We are both the divine and the human, which is more like an animal.
Yeah.
Yes, it's more like this. Well, there's the body, the animal that wants to survive, and there's this divine being that's constantly becoming more of who it is. And we have, as a human being, the dance is in between these two. It's like, how can you be that and that at the same time? And that's how we figure it out. That's what makes it so challenging, is that you're not like perfect and everything is great, but you're also not a tree where you're dependent on your environment, not that trees aren't capable, but
and it's that balance. I mean, even to be fair to all the facilitators out there and guides and healers, none of them are perfect, but there's a thing about embodying the divine that they strive for, that you talk about a lot. And I think that consistency of doing their work, the discipline is an important part of it. As a journeyer that goes to a guide, and I don't expect them to be perfect. And if I do, I'm going to set myself up for disappointment, which has happened in the past when I was younger, and I was like, oh my God, this guy is like a guru. It's like, no, he's normal, just like everybody else. But I love how you talked about, we have that duality between the God, the divine, and the human, the animal, the imperfect. That's a beautiful, beautiful message. Anything else? We're coming up at time, and it's been a beautiful conversation. And I just, I'm happy. Yeah, we've got a few more minutes until your next meeting, and I'm happy to answer questions, cover other topics you're passionate about.
If you catch me talking about passions, I don't shut up. So I highly recommend that you end this interview. This has been a pleasure, an absolute pleasure. And I just want to say that I'm grateful to know you as a person, grateful that I'm here again a second time. And I'm grateful for these beautiful people that you've interviewed the past year. I haven't seen all of them, but I've seen quite a few, and it's always a pleasure to catch those episodes. And the recent one, I forgot.
Jessica?
Was the last one. Yeah, was that the last one, or was there more after?
It was Jessica Posilico. She's the founder of High Priestess Healing, and it's actually fun to talk with you. And see your interactions with her on LinkedIn on those posts, because there's actually a lot of overlap in some of the way you talk about certain topics or think about stuff. I love how you're both talking about the crazy, the crazy, and I think Steve Jobs has a quote on the crazies, and I think most of the people who come to my show would qualify as the good kind of crazy. I don't know if there's a bad kind that implies judgment, but we're all a little bit crazy, and
that's true. So that's true. And I think, I remember Jessica, and I was wondering if there was another episode, but it sounds like that's the last episode. Yeah. That was beautiful. I really love the short videos that you put, because it's just a great way to kind of get an introduction to the person and then kind of see what the whole episode is going to be about. So I love that. For the longest time, I thought there was something wrong with me. And sometimes I catch myself asking that question. Is there something wrong with me? Is there something wrong with me? Am I should I look into my brain a little bit, double check it? But I just realized that there's no such thing like dis-ease or something would only become problematic if it becomes problematic to you and to the people around you. But if it actually ends up helping you elevate your life and elevate other people's lives, does it matter? And that it's different? In fact, who said that we had to be the same? We're just so different. We're very similar in many ways as human beings, but we are so different. We're so unique that maybe it's crazy to expect all of us to be the same or to think the same way. The thing about truth, in my opinion, is that two truths can coexist. In fact, truth can only be truth if it has all the facets, right? Both sides of the coin. And all the time, not sometimes, they're always paradoxical. So it's always like a mind fuck, for lack of better words. Like if it's true, it's a mind fuck. That's how I see it. It's like something is only true if it's a mind fuck, but also very simple in a weird way, right? So it's it is. We are crazy, but not crazy, and we are weird, but we are not weird. It depends on who you ask and whose opinion matters most. About myself, it's my own opinion. So I'm at peace. It's cool. I'm fine with whatever. Yeah, and I don't think people think about me that much. Yeah. Thank you.
I don't know. I mean, it's like. I think there's a lot of people who think about you, who watch your videos and follow you. And so, like, I think there's a lot more than you think, and probably a lot more than I think, a lot more than we all think, but in a good way. You never realized how much impact you have.
It matters. It matters. Even the impact that we make is not dependent on how many people watch or whether or not people watch. There is a weird energetic thing you create just by being. Right. You just impact the world in a certain way.
Yeah. Beautiful. That's a great way to
end it. Yeah.
To end it. Where can people find you, get in touch with you? And I'll put all that in the show notes, but for people who are listening.
Sure. It's brandsarealive.com. The best way to keep in touch is brandsarealive.com/newsletters. I send that video that you talked about once a week there. And I have YouTube, I'm on LinkedIn, but really the newsletters is the best way to keep in touch with me. Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
Aleana, thank you for your time. It was a pleasure again. And I guess we'll see each other again in a year.
Of course. Yes.
Great.
Awesome. I love it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for listening. If you like the show, please subscribe to it on Apple Podcasts. Follow me on Instagram at LeadershipAdelics, or stop by my website and say hi at fooyad.com. That's FOOYAD. There's a lot going on, and I'd love to hear from you all, the listeners that tune in every week. And if you have suggestions for future guests, don't hesitate to reach out. I'm there, and I'd love to get more guests on the show. Thank you. Have a great day.